everyone. I'm Angela Watson Robertson, and welcome to Masters of Reinvention, your ultimate guide to changing your life. I'm so glad you're here. Each month on this show, I interview a master in the art of reinventing your life and your health to help inspire you and empower you to live your best life. So for the next 60 minutes, we'll be exploring how you can experience less stress, greater well-being, and even better physical health by changing the story of your health. Today, I have Dr. Carl Greer with me to discuss his recent book, Change the Story of Your Health, as we discuss how you can change the story of your health through the use of shamanic and Jungian techniques for healing. Carl Greer is a practicing clinical psychologist, Jungian analyst, and shamanic practitioner. He teaches at the C.G. Jung Institute of Chicago, is on staff at the Replogle Center for Counseling and Wellbeing, and is the best-selling author of Change Your Story, Change Your Life, and Change the Story of Your Health. Dr. Greer, welcome to the show.
Nice to be here, Angela. Thank you.
So glad to have you here. First, let me say that I absolutely loved reading your books. I dove through them over the past few weeks, and I wanted to show our viewers on Facebook Live. So your recent book, Change the Story of Your Health, and your previous book, Change Your Story, Change Your Life. So thank you so much for writing them. Thank you for offering your work into the world. And as someone new to shamanic practices, I just want to say that I did learn a lot and some things that I can now apply, to my life. So thank you, sir.
You're most welcome.
So I wanted to dive in and ask you a little bit more about your most recent book, Change the Story of Change Your Life. So your book is all about health, and I wanted to talk a little bit about what it means to have a story about our health. So can you tell me what is exactly a person's story of his or her health?
It's what you would answer if someone said, Angela, you did talk a little bit about your health, and you would open it up wherever you chose to open it up, and you might say, well, currently I feel such and such, or I used to feel like this, now I feel like that. It's the things we tell ourselves that we can look at as a story. And I find that when we do that, stories have the energy of emotions and themes, as well as facts, and it allows us to hook into our health in ways other than just a sterile lot of words.
Okay. So when you say we have a story of our health, when you use the word story, sometimes we hear, in psychology, or I know sometimes I've heard people refer to story as something that's made up in my mind. That's not true. So what do you mean so much by the word story? How would you define that?
Well, it's what we would say about our health. And it's an interesting thing you just said, are we making that up? But if it's coming from our mind, it has some meaning to us. Even the things that we make up are significant, I believe. And so if we develop the ability to step back from the story that we've told ourselves and observe it, then we can start to make changes. Otherwise, sometimes we're caught in the flow of our story, which is often written by somebody else, our culture, our parents, so on and so forth.
Okay, so you're saying that even if it is... Oh, excuse me, sorry.
It's an entry point to get into our lives, and particularly about our health.
Okay. So you're saying that even if, let's say, we did maybe make something up, in quotes, that there's still value to that because it's still something that, we are perceiving or experiencing.
Yes.
Okay. So I know that in your book you talk a little bit about, being attached to a story or maybe needing to create a new story. And this is something I really resonate with in my own life when I realize, wow, I'm really attached to a certain type of way of viewing the world and I need to change. So how does someone know, and it may or may not even be an issue, but how does someone know when they are attached to a specific story about their health? And then the second part is, how do they know then when they should probably create a new story?
Well, I think the first step is to have a way that they can engage what they think the story is. So you have to start with what is in order to be able to change it. And what I've found, oftentimes people aren't really wanting to be truthful about what is. They want to tell the story that they want others to hear, as opposed to perhaps the story that actually is for them. That gets back to what do you make up, or what is your truth. But once you start as hard as you can to be honest with yourself about your health story, then you're at a starting point to ask yourself, would you like it to be different? And if you'd like it to be different, then the question is, why isn't it? If you have an idea as to what you'd like to be different in your health story, but it's not that way, then you ask yourself, why isn't it? And I'm suggesting that often it's not different because there's part of us that doesn't want it to be different. So a lot of my practices are to get to those unconscious parts of ourselves that are keeping us from changing when another part of us would like to change. So the first step is to be honest with yourself, and I have practices I talk about in my book to help us do that. I have questions I suggest you might ask yourself. Then, when you're at the place where you'd like to change, perhaps, I have ways you can look at the reasons why you haven't been changing and maybe get energy and information to make those changes.
Okay. So it sounds like understanding why you aren't changing is kind of part of the work that you're doing. And that's probably some fertile ground for doing some personal development work. If you see that, hey, there's this area that I would like to change, but it's not changing, that actually can be valuable information in the process.
Yes, yes.
Okay. So I know that you talk about in your book your, previous life, you had an MBA, you still, you have an MBA, you're a business owner, you're still working in business. So I'm wondering about your, personally, when you made that big transition from being in business to being a psychologist and working with shamanic healing, did you see a need to write a new story in your own life? Tell me a little bit more about your own personal journey.
There's this idea of zero-based budgeting and muddling through. Zero-based budgeting is every once in a while you just take stock and start from scratch, or you take from where you are and just tweak it at the margins and muddle through. I'm a muddler througher. And I started off, in a business family. My dad worked for U.S. Steel. I worked for U.S. Steel in the mills summers. I thought I would be a middle American, middle class guy working in industry. And then I had a chance to go to graduate school at Columbia. I got my doctorate there. I taught at their business school. And I thought, well, that's a different kind of life. But then I gravitated back to business. I worked in business still am in one form or another for 50 years. But halfway through, I got dissatisfied. It wasn't feeding my soul. I had an early interest in psychology, so I went back to school in clinical psychology. That was better than what I had been doing in some ways in terms of feeding my soul, but I still had a yearning for more. I became a Jungian Analyst. I wanted more. Then I got interested in Eastern practices, Qigong and so forth, martial arts, and then shamanism. And for the last 17 years, shamanism has been my real important spiritual path. So I've just kind of been touched by spirit from time to time in ways that are hard to understand, except maybe in hindsight. And I am where I am now, getting towards the end of my life, but feeling happier and more fulfilled in many ways than I ever have.
Wow, I love stories of transformation and change and reinvention like that. And it sounds like you were able to kind of blend your previous career, your previous life with your new career. It's not necessarily that you had to, throw the baby out with the bathwater. So hold that thought. We're going to talk a little bit more about that. We're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we'll explore more about changing the story of your health and feeling better. You are listening to Masters of Reinvention with Angela Watson Robertson and my guest, Dr. Carl Greer, author of Change the Story of Your Health. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.